How's everybody doing? Hey, Jose, Robert. My mom and dad look like they're here. Hello, mom and dad. So, hey, Brian and Maurice, Dave and Pam and Brian and Bill. So, my name is Neil Roseman. About 2.5 years ago, I kind of had a transformational experience. I listened to a lot of financial podcasts, and there's a podcast called Radical Personal Finance, and I really like the guy. And he did a 2 hour podcast that was titled "Why I Was Wrong About Bitcoin." And in with that, anytime somebody who you really respect goes on a podcast to he has about 100,000 followers and says he was wrong about something, I started listening. And that's what kind of started my journey into Bitcoin, really studying it. I've probably spent, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, about 1,000 hours studying Bitcoin. Study is the wrong word. I don't want to look like I have a textbook, but it's like listening to podcasts, reading blogs on Twitter, talking to people, going to conferences like that. So that kind of started my Bitcoin journey. Since then, I've been buying Bitcoin almost every week. It's a substantial part of my personal net worth. I've also invested in and owned two Bitcoin mining facilities. One in South Dakota. We have 1 megawatt. And I know you probably don't know what a megawatt is, but that kind of translates into a $140,000 electric bill. Just to put it in perspective. We don't pay that much because we're in South Dakota. That's kind of the point. But if you were in Maryland, that's what you would be paying for the electric bill for that. And we mine about 1 Bitcoin a month, give or take. Okay, and then we just bought 3 natural gas wells in Pennsylvania, and we're in the process of developing that. We just ordered all our equipment, and we should be up and running, in the initial phase in January. So we're very, very, very excited about that. So I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna spend the whole time basically understanding this sentence. So in this sentence, Bitcoin is decentralized, censure resistant, rules based hard money. So Bitcoin is decentralized, censure resistant, rules based hard money. Okay. So let's talk about what that means for a second. When Bitcoin was invented, like, around by Satoshi Nakamoto, that's not the person's real name. Nobody knows who this person is. Okay. He invented Bitcoin, got it up and running, and then disappeared. He has something like $40 billion of Bitcoin, and he's never touched it. Okay. He's like a true, I don't know. I, I don't know what word you want to use, but the fact that he invented it, has all that money by mining. He was the first miner of Bitcoin and hasn't touched it is pretty amazing. He started it coming out of the '09, the '08, '09, '10 recession, and his disgust with, and I say it's a he, we don't even know it's a he or a she, but with his disgust of what happened where the banks got all the money from the government and Main Street didn't. And he thought there had to be a better way. So he invented Bitcoin, and he invented Bitcoin as peer-to-peer money. Okay. Peer-to-peer money. It sounds really simple. It sounds like duh, but really, there's no way to send peer-to-peer money right now. Now, you might think there is. You might think you have Venmo, you can write a check, you can do a credit card, you got Cash App, you got Zelle, you can wire money, you can ACH, but that's not peer-to-peer money because every one of those types of money transfers goes through a third party. And anytime you go through a third party, the government can get involved, and the government does get involved. So when you actually talk about peer-to-peer money, there's only two ways that I've seen to do that. One is Bitcoin, and the other one would just be give somebody cash. Okay. So this was transformational to be able to send money from one person to the other person and not have it go through a third party. Okay. When Bitcoin is really nothing more than open source software. Okay. It goes through it's software that has certain rules, and you have to follow those rules. And It's decentralized. So when we say it's decentralized, that's part of that peer-to-peer where there's no head of Bitcoin. There's no, you know, corporate headquarters of Bitcoin. There's no company called Bitcoin. This is what makes it distinct from all the other crypto. Okay, so Bitcoiners like to review that there's Bitcoin and there's everything else. There's crypto. We don't like to view ourselves as being crypto. Most crypto is a company that's out to fix something, a problem in the world. So, like a simple one is we all know how high credit card fees are. Yes, the 3% that we all get charged, or that the businesses get charged, and then obviously that's passed on to you. So there's a lot of crypto companies out there, for example, that are trying to fix that to make it 1 cent instead of 3%. Okay, like that. But they're centralized. It's a company that's out with a product that's trying to accomplish something. It's not decentralized. There is no head of Bitcoin. Bitcoin lives on about 50 million computers around the world. And it's almost like a virus where it can't be cut off, it can't be stopped. If something happens on one computer, it lives on the other ones like that. So it's really decentralized. And it's the first time we've ever had a in our lifetime, a decentralized uh, monetary system. Okay. Now, the other thing about Bitcoin is that it's censure resistant. Okay. And what that means is because it's decentralized, it the government can't, I'm not going to say it can't because it's not, I notice I didn't say censure proof, I said censure resistant, right? The government won't be able to, they because it's peer to peer, it doesn't have to go through those on ramps. Doesn't it very often does go through the on ramps? Don't get me wrong. When I say the on ramps, I'm talking about the banks, the brokerage companies, the exchanges. Anytime you have a third party involved with your Bitcoin, you've got the government looking over your shoulder and can void the transaction. They can take your money. I mean, we've all have stories of that. We've all read about that. Some of it's happened to us where you made a deposit in the bank and the bank just froze your deposit for 2 weeks or 5 days or 3 days. I wired money. I have a lending business, and I wired money one time, and the bank just took the money for a week and wouldn't tell me why. Okay. And that's all that. And it's not necessarily the bank's fault. The bank is just doing what the government is forcing it to do. And I'm sure that money that I was wiring to somebody kind of popped up on some list somewhere. And so they had to go research it and make sure that it was legit and not, money laundering or terrorists or that kind of thing. So Bitcoin is censure resistant. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
When we get back to decentralized,
Mhm.
so this is, I guess, like everything else, it's made up,
Mhm.
and this is made up, and we decided it has value, and no one's in charge of it,
Mhm.
and it exists on computers.
Yep.
Sounds made up. Sounds like BS. I mean,
It's that magic internet money, right?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's, I think when, like,
Well, so
so that's,
I'm gonna actually put that on hold for a second because I want to get to a couple more things and we'll tie it all together and you'll see what that is. So let me go into and just for you guys that weren't here right when we started, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna put this up again that Bitcoin is decentralized, censure resistant, rules based hard money. Okay. Decentralized, we talked a little bit about that. Censure resistant, rules based, hard money. Okay. Now, before I go into the rules based, I want to talk about the decentralized and the censure resistant. I could send Jose Bitcoin. Okay. Now, I can send it right to him. It doesn't have to go through a third party. It might go through a third party if Jose tells me he wants me to send it to his Coinbase account, for example, I could do that. Okay. And it would go right onto his account. Now one of the things that people always ask is, well, how do I sell my Bitcoin? Okay. Well, Jose could go to Coinbase and sell his Bitcoin. Now that does create it being, it on a third party. Okay. But Jose could also sell his Bitcoin by going to Robert and doing a cash transaction. Okay. There's many ways to do it without the third party, but getting money for your Bitcoin, that's one of the questions I get from a lot of people in the beginning is getting your money from Bitcoin is very easy. Okay. I just put my, I just put the money, I move my Bitcoin onto an exchange, I sell it, cash, just like a Fidelity, just like you sell a stock, okay, or an ETF or a mutual fund. The money goes in there, I can wire it to myself, etc. So getting the money for the Bitcoin is very easy and it's basically instantaneous, just like selling a stock in Fidelity or Schwab or Vanguard. Okay. So the fundamentally, Bitcoin is a rules-based monetary system. And you might say, well, what does that mean? Why is Neil emphasizing the name rules-based? It's rules-based because it follows the rules of the software. Okay. Now, in the current monetary system that we're in, called the dollar, or what is more accurately referred to as the fiat system. Anytime you're in a fiat system, it means you're dealing with paper money. Okay, so it doesn't mean it could be the dollar, the yen, the ruble, the yuan, the any of that stuff. Okay, that's you're in a paper system. There's no rules to that system. So you know that people create the rules for that system. The Fed creates the price of money by what they do with interest rates. Okay, and what's behind the Fed are people. So what's behind the people are politics. So you get this system that is political, and you get a very terrible monetary system because everybody spends more money than they have. All the fiat systems, every single fiat system in the fiat money, okay, has gone to zero and will go to zero. And I can prove that to you. Okay, because I can prove to you that that a dollar in 1950 is only worth 1.5 cents today. So you want to think about that. A dollar in 1950 is only worth 1.5 cents today. And you give all the examples of that, the 5 cent Big Mac, right? That now costs $5. That's a 1%. So we know over the course of time that all fiat money is going to zero. Now, in this people-based fiat system, the incentives are screwed up because there's no incentive for somebody not to overspend because politicians get elected by spending money. Okay. And here's the thing, the more money they spend, the better they think it is for you. Very possibly the better you think it is. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when you print more, we've printed 33, 34 trillion dollars, okay, that we're in debt. That's money we've printed that we don't even have. Now, that when you create more money, what happens to the value of that money? Yeah, Rachel's going down, right? So the value of the money goes down. How does that show up? When the value of your money goes down, how does that show up for you? It shows up in inflation. Okay, but here's the thing, inflation is really deceiving. So inflation is one of the worst things possible, especially for the lower class and the middle class, but it does a lot of good things. It would appear to be good things. It makes your 401k go up. So you have $100,000 in your 401k, and the next year you have 110. You're like, yay! But if inflation went up 10%, you have no money. There's no additional money there if inflation went up 10%. So inflation has this I don't know, like zombie effect on people where lots of times they think everything's good when it's not. So when politicians look at either I cut somebody's social security or I cut defense or I cut whatever, or I can just spend all this money and inflation happens down the road, the incentives are misaligned. Okay. Bitcoin creates aligned incentives because it's rules-based money. Now, what do I mean by that? The number one way that, and probably the number one most important thing to understand about Bitcoin is that there's a cap in the number of Bitcoin. there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. And that statement is probably the number one reason why Bitcoin is as popular as it is today. Bitcoin today is a 1.5 trillion market cap. It's not millions, not hundreds of millions, not billions or hundreds of billions. 1.5 trillion. It's the number 6 currency in the world. Okay. So if you want to grasp how big it is, you might say, well, why are people buying Bitcoin? They're right today, they're not buying Bitcoin because they want to send Bitcoin to Robert or Jose or Maurice or Bill. They're buying Bitcoin because it's a store of value. It's a protection against the debasement of the monetary system because there's only 21 million that will ever be created. Okay, so that's what creates people wanting to buy Bitcoin. If you look at it like, if you look at it like fine art, we all know like kind of fine art, the Picassos, they go up every year in value. Why? Because there's a limited supply of them. Obviously, you can't, as a rule of thumb, it's very difficult to use fine art as currency, while Bitcoin can. Bitcoin is almost like the perfect currency in that it's divisible. Okay, each Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million. They're called sats or satoshis. Just like a dollar is divisible into 100 cents, a Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million pieces. So you could buy 1/100th millionth of a Bitcoin if you wanted. So so a lot of people have a concern like I can't afford a Bitcoin or I can't, how do I do that at 75,000? No, you can buy 7,500, $750. You can buy $75 a Bitcoin. You can buy $50 a Bitcoin. Okay, it's divisible up to 100 million per Bitcoin. So in this rules-based money, everybody has to follow the rules. Okay. Now, that is mind-boggling if you think about it, because in the current system we have, people don't have to follow the rules. Has anybody heard of the Cantillon effect? Okay. The Cantillon effect is like a theory that, or an effect, I don't know if it's a theory or it's been proven, but that how you do financially is a function of how close you are to the money printer. So the closer you are to the money printer, the closer you are to the Fed, the more money you get from the system, that $35 trillion. And a perfect example would be, what happened during COVID. So I own several businesses. I got $143,000 of PPP loans that got forgiven. Okay. I got $1 million. I didn't take it, but they offered me $1 million in 3.75% loans. Okay, over 30 years. Okay, what did the average person get? 3,500 bucks? $7,000, whatever the number was. I don't know what the number was. But so the closer, what did the banks get? What did the banks get in the bailout? The closer you are to the money printer, the better your life is financially. Bitcoin puts everybody on an even playing field. Okay, everybody's on an even playing field because it's rules-based money. It's not this like hierarchy, or if you're close to the Fed or you get you support your politician, you get things for you. That doesn't exist inside of Bitcoin. Okay, so people are buying Bitcoin right now as a rule of thumb because of the $21 million cap. Okay, they view the fiat currencies are all going to zero. This is a way for them to protect themselves against the debasement of the fiat currency, or another way to say that, against inflation. Okay, now I want to go over one more thing, then we'll open up some questions and get into some deeper stuff. The third or the fourth and final thing is that Bitcoin is hard money. Now, it's kind of funny because I lend hard money, but it's a little bit different. Okay. So when we talk about hard money, we talk about gold. Gold is like the hardest money besides Bitcoin. Does anybody know why gold is considered hard money? And it's not because it's physically hard. So when you have a hard asset, it's an asset that you have to have work has to be done to create the asset. Okay, so with gold, it's very difficult to create gold. You have to buy mining equipment. You have to buy a mine. You have to hire employees. You have to spend all this money. You got to dig the mine and mine the gold. It takes work to get the gold. Oil is a hard asset because you have to mine the oil. Okay, you can't just create oil out of thin air. You just can't create gold out of thin air. Fiat currency is not hard because they could just print it. There's no work behind it. Doesn't take anything. So fiat currency is like a recent phenomenon from like the 1930s on. So, for example, for the first 5,000 years of history, we never had inflation. Now, you might have inflation like if the crops, if there was a drought and the crops didn't grow, but we never had this systematic inflation like we have today, where we just grow up thinking that inflation is normal because it's like the water we swim in. But I will tell you that if you think about it, inflation's not normal. If we weren't printing money, there would be no inflation. And in fact, there would probably be deflation because technology forces things to deflate. Things are cheaper today because of technology, okay, than they were in the past. So technology is deflationary. So if you had no money printing, you'd be in a more deflationary economy than an inflationary economy. Completely turns everything upside down. Okay, Bitcoin is all part of this. Now you might say, well, Neil, I can't even touch Bitcoin. It's virtual. How is it a hard asset? Well, it's a hard asset because Bitcoin is backed by energy. Okay. Bitcoin is backed by energy. Now, because it takes energy to mine the Bitcoin to get the new Bitcoin up to the 21 million, there's about 20 million Bitcoin that are already out there. So there's only 1 more million left to go. Over the next 120 years, though, that Bitcoin will be mined. And we're not going to go a lot into mining. I have a whole thing on mining, a whole webinar that we'll post in the chat that you can come in. I think it's next week, and we'll talk extensively about mining. But even the transactions to move the money from Jose to Robert will actually take a miner logging that transaction onto the blockchain. Okay, so mining it takes a lot of energy to mine. Okay. So while oil is backed by the drilling and the people and the transportation, and gold is backed by the mining equipment and digging the mine, we're backed by energy. Nobody can just come in and take over the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin network is the largest computer network in the world. There is a way to attack that network. Like in theory, you would have to have 51% of control of the network in order to do that. Okay. And then if you get 51% of control, you could start changing the rules. Okay. However, that is basically, for all intents and purposes, impossible in today's world. That might have been possible back in 2017, 18, 19, even 20. The network was small enough that China could have come in and put all the resources towards it. Okay. In today's world, you couldn't do that. The Bitcoin network is too big. Okay. And the bigness of it, the energy that it takes to run the network is what secures the network. That's what secures your Bitcoin. Now, I want to talk about hard money. I want to go back to the gold thing for a second. Gold is at about $2,500 an ounce. Okay. They make about 2%. They increase the amount of gold every year by about 2%. If gold went to $25,000 an ounce, what do you think they would do? They would make more gold, right? They would dig deeper. They would use more advanced techniques, more expensive techniques. If gold went to $25,000 an ounce, a lot more gold would come out of the ground. Now, if gold went to $250,000 an ounce, what would they then do then? They'd probably fly to the moon and mine gold on the moon. Okay, and I don't know if that's $250,000 an ounce or $1 million an ounce, but at some point it would be profitable to send people to the moon and mine gold on the moon and bring it back. Okay. The point is, gold is like the hardest asset we've ever had, and it's still not hard. It still can increase in supply, and it increases in supply based on the price. Bitcoin doesn't do that. Bitcoin is capped at 21 million. It doesn't matter what the price is. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever. So it is the hardest and scarcest asset that you can buy or that you can own. And that's why people are flocking to Bitcoin. Now, let me stop there. Let me take some questions. I know it's so hard to get Bitcoin wrapped around your head. It takes hours to kind of understand it and think through it. But what questions do you have about Bitcoin so far? You can type them in the chat. You can raise your hand, your virtual hand or your real hand.
I'll
Yeah,
say,
Matt,
what are the dangers of owning Bitcoin? I guess, is there an ability for one day the government saying, hey, we're just going to confiscate it all? Is there the possibility of losing it? You know, if you have it on a laptop and your laptop gets stolen,
Yep.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So there is the possibility that Bitcoin goes to zero, right? Like it just fails as that possibility. I don't even consider that a possibility anymore. That was a possibility, a legit possibility back in 2017, 2008, anything before that. It was small enough. It wasn't, the government could have taken over the Bitcoin network because now the network's too big for the government, any government to do that. So the chances of Bitcoin going to zero are basically zero in my opinion, though I'm not going to say it's absolutely zero. The Bitcoin, when um, the risks, so what Bitcoin is sovereign money. Okay. It's the only money that you can own and nobody can touch. Now, if you keep your Bitcoin on Coinbase or any of the other exchanges, FTX, we all saw what happened with that. Celsius saw what happened with that. Those went under. Okay. If you keep Bitcoin yourself in cold storage, okay. And Matt, you talked about being on a hard drive. A hard drive would be considered hot storage, and that's not recommended. Okay. But I keep my Bitcoin in cold storage, which means only I have the keys to it. There's an old saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. If you keep Bitcoin on an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken, there's several of them, okay, or Binance, they have your keys. Okay? You've given your keys to them. If you keep it in cold storage, you have your keys. Now, there's downsides to that. The upside is that you control your money. It's unconfiscatable, potentially. Okay? I mean, I'm not saying somebody can't put a gun to your head and you'd have to turn over some stuff, but that would be your choice. The government can't just take it. Right now, the government can freeze your accounts. Okay? We all have experiences of that. Okay? So if having sovereign money is important to you, then you have to be responsible for your sovereign security. So you got to take the appropriate measures, Matt, to ensure that stuff doesn't happen. And when you hold Bitcoin in cold storage, there's no 800 number to call. There's no help desk. If you screw up, if you don't follow the best practices, there's lots of help out there on the internet to kind of show you how to do these things correctly. If you don't do it correctly, yes, you could lose your Bitcoin. And people have in the past. Now, to be honest, or not honest, that's the wrong word. To be clear, when people lose their Bitcoin in the past, so first off, the tools are a lot better today than they were back in 2012, 2013, 2014 to protect your Bitcoin. That's number one. Number two, though, the reason people lost their Bitcoin, Matt, most of them, was because it was worthless back then. Bitcoin was $1. You had 100 Bitcoin. It was $100. You left on you didn't care. You put it on your computer's hard drive. Then the computer disappeared, got stolen, went to a landfill, just forgot about. Well, now those 100 Bitcoin are worth 7.5 million. Okay. So a lot of people lost their Bitcoin because it was insignificant at the time. Um, oh, I'm sorry, Robert, did I screw up? Robert,
That was Robert talking, and
for
Matt
some reason I was
is
looking at
next.
Matt.
That was Robert,
I apologize. I apologize, Robert. I saw Matt's hand up and I just thought he was talking. Um, okay, so I kind of talked a little bit about that, Robert, but I'm not sure if I answered your question. Can you ask anything that's unclear or that I didn't answer?
Oh, I think it's a good, inroads into, figuring out ways to keep it safe. So, the other thing that always got me was, and I think a lot of us played around with Bitcoin back during 2020, when there was not a whole lot to do. Robinhood made it easy to just basically be able to buy and sell back and forth. And, of course, the IRS is now asking if you've engaged in transactions. So, obviously, if this thing becomes more valuable and, untraceable, the powers that be are going to, do whatever they can to obviously try to, get whatever stranglehold they can around it. So I appreciate the answers that you gave me, and obviously it's a good inroads to start kind of going down that path of learning more.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good thing that you brought up, Robert. A lot of people were gambling, we're playing the crypto game and we're gambling. You can see that Bitcoin is not a gamble for me. It's like a well thought out, like looking at the monetary, like it's an investment in the future of a better monetary system for everyone. I want you to kind of get a sense of what Bitcoin can accomplish in the world. Okay. We live in the United States. We use the US dollar. The US dollar is the reserve currency of the world. If you're in Africa and there's a good chance that your government is going to collapse over the course of your lifetime, you might go through a collapsing government a couple times and you might have to move to another country. We've all heard the stories of our friends or friends' parents who've came to America, they crossed the border with just the clothes on their backs. With Bitcoin, that's forever gone. See, if you memorize your keys, you can have all your money in Bitcoin, cross the border, and then go to an ATM machine in the new country, plug in your keys, and out will spit that currency. So for the first time, in the past, you couldn't cross borders with any kind of wealth. You try bringing a gold bar across the border. Okay, it'll get confiscated or it'll get stolen. Okay, especially if you're like in a migrant situation, right? Like, so Bitcoin has this like unbelievable opportunity to completely transform the world. Okay, let me give you another example of the power of Bitcoin. And this is the people that are true Bitcoiners, the ones that aren't gambling, that aren't playing the casino. This is what they understand is there's many villages in Africa without electricity. Okay, in the Sudan and Ethiopia, this is where this is happening the most. But there's rivers going through these villages. So if there's rivers going through the villages, there should be electricity because you could just dam up the river and create electricity, right? But that dam costs money, and there's not enough money downriver to pay the electric bills to be able to build a dam. Okay, Bitcoin is changing all that. And I don't want to get too much into Bitcoin mining because that's a whole different thing, but they're building dams in Africa now, okay, small dams that can power dozens of villages miles down the dam. And the power of the dam is now Bitcoin mining. So the villages are using 10-15% electricity and paying, $1 a month for that. And then they're Bitcoin mining off that because remember the river is running 24 hours a day. You only need electricity probably 8 to 10 hours a day. So all that other time they're running the power, and then that Bitcoin mining gives a return on the dam to be able to afford to build the dams.
Well, you
So
would you would think that, and it doesn't make sense to you that if the cost of electricity goes down, that the value of Bitcoin goes up, or the cost of creating electricity goes down, that the cost of Bitcoin will go up, value?
So it's Bitcoin's only been around for about 15 years, right? So it's hard. You got to be careful looking at any kind of past. However, Bitcoin hash rate, which is the amount of computer power that's attached to the network, it constantly is gone almost a straight line going up. like this, and the Bitcoin price has followed that. Now, I know I didn't quite answer your question, but because the cheaper the power, the more hash. So the more computers will come online, the cheaper the power. A lot of very sophisticated people believe that Bitcoin price follows the hash rate. So as hash rate goes up, the Bitcoin price will follow. I don't know if I buy that or not. Okay. Like we'll see. We'll see over the next 20, 30 years. But there's a lot of people that really believe that has been the past for the 15 years. Okay, good. Matt?
Yeah, I had similar questions to what Robert asked. So yeah, he mentioned the government. So, all these transactions. So you're
Yep.
buying it, you're selling it, and is it truly untraceable and they don't know, or are you going to have to pay taxes on that?
Yeah.
That's my first question. And I have another question.
Yeah. So I want to say one thing. I own a lot of Bitcoin. I've never sold anything ever. Most Bitcoin people never sell. Okay. And that's because they follow Gresham's law. Okay. Gresham's law says that people will gravitate towards the hardest asset. So for example, if you go to Mexico and you sit in a restaurant, usually you see the menu prices will be in both pesos and dollars. If you pay in dollars, the owner of the restaurant will keep the dollars and pay his employees in pesos. Because dollar is better than pesos. It's harder, it's less debased. As bad as the US dollar is, the peso's worse, right? It gets debased even more than the US dollar does. So one, you're going to find that people don't sell their Bitcoin. Now, if you're gambling, you're trading, like people do it for that reason. Bitcoin is not designed to not pay taxes. So let's talk about how this works. So one of the powers of Bitcoin is it uses the blockchain. Okay, we've all heard that phrase before, I'm sure. Okay. The blockchain is nothing more than a ledger. Okay. Now, the thing that's transformational about the blockchain, even if companies or people don't like Bitcoin for whatever reason, almost everybody is embracing the power of the blockchains and blockchain. So Bitcoin, Matt, if you have a bank account and I have a bank account, you have a ledger at your bank account that's private, supposed to be private. I have a ledger at my bank account that's supposed to be private. I write you a check, it debits my account and it credits your account, right? And there's billions and billions and probably, I don't know, 30 billion ledgers in the world, or maybe even way more than that. Okay. So what the transformational power of the blockchain is that the blockchain is one ledger. I feel very confident in telling you that there's probably only going to be one ledger 50 years from now, not billions of them. Okay? Because everything is on the blockchain. Okay? And it's public. I have it on my computer right over here where I can look at every transaction that's ever been done with Bitcoin. So every 10 minutes, the miners post a transaction and they post a block on the blockchain that consists of about 4,000 transactions. And you can see every transaction on the blockchain. Okay. And it's public. Now, Matt, I don't know what your transaction is because the transaction that I see that might be yours might be 50 digit. Your account number might be it's like 50 digits. So I don't know that it's you. But I could see that somebody moved. If you bought a Bitcoin for Robert, I can see that Bitcoin transfer. I can't tell that who owned Robert's wallet. I can't tell Matt who owned your wallet, but I can see the Bitcoin moving. So what you're going to find is that if you're trying to hide from the government or you're trying to do something criminal, Bitcoin is actually not a very good system for that. It might have been in the early days where it got a bad rep because the government didn't know anything about it. But most criminals in today's world don't use Bitcoin because it creates a trail that can be followed because everything is on the blockchain. Now, obviously, there's some reasons to use Bitcoin. Doesn't matter if you're a criminal and Robert, you're a criminal, you can send the money to Robert just like that within seconds for almost no fees. But that there's a record of that. You know, if you guys go and exchange a suitcase of cash, there's no record of that. Okay. So most criminals don't use the blockchain. Most of the drug dealers don't use the blockchain, don't use Bitcoin because of that. They kind of did some research, and like something like 0.2% of all transactions were criminal, you know, less than 1%. It's not really, it's not good for that reason. There's other crypto that's actually better, which the government's trying to, you know, stamp out for that reason. I know you asked a bunch of questions. I don't know if I answered them all. Can you,
Yeah, I think I was just
So-
it is private, and it's not you know, it's not owned or managed by the government, but it's not hidden from the government, because
correct.
in your example there, and then also in your example of like a immigrant that comes over and goes into an ATM and pulls out some money, that's a transaction that then is discoverable.
Yes. So, I mean, I'm never, you know, if you sell Bitcoin and you made money or you lost money, it's a taxable event one way or the other.
Right.
Okay. And more than likely you sold it on an exchange, which now the government knows about.
Right.
Because if you're on an exchange, it's KYC, which stands for Know Your Customer. You know, when you open up an account on an exchange, whether it be Schwab or whether it be Coinbase, you got to give your ID to them, your social security number, and they know that that exists. So people are not owning I'm not saying some people don't own Bitcoin as a way to avoid paying taxes. Obviously, that does exist, but that's not part of my plan. Like I'll just pay the if I make the money, I'll pay the taxes. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I wasn't asking for an. I was just more of knowledge. So
Yeah.
if Robert wants to drop off a suitcase full of money to me, go ahead. And
I don't have any.
My other question is that you know, maybe I missed this. I was a couple minutes late, but what is the difference between, like, what they say crypto and Bitcoin? I mean, is like Bitcoin is crypto, but not all crypto is Bitcoin? Is it kind of that situation?
So crypto stands for cryptography. Okay. So everything behind, if you notice the people that were working on Bitcoin in the beginning, you know, Satoshi Nakamoto was like the main guy that started it, but there's a whole bunch of developers, many of them still around and still working on it. They're all cryptographers. Okay. Because so that's what, because you've got to keep it secure and safe, right? You know, one of the questions, if you start to dig into the technical side of Bitcoin, the question is how do you prevent from double spending your Bitcoin? So if I send you one Bitcoin, Matt, how does the system prevent me from sending that same Bitcoin to Robert? You follow me? That's a lot more complicated than it seems initially. Okay? Like, and that's what the cryptography does. So all cryptocurrencies deal a lot with the cryptography of it. Okay. Bitcoin, so technically, by that definition, Bitcoin is crypto. However, if you want to troll a Bitcoiner, just call it crypto, because they'll just bristle at that. Okay. Because crypto has this really negative thing, because most of the crypto companies are just pump and dumps. Crypto back in 2021 and 17, 18, 19, crypto was a way to raise money for whatever reason, like to start a company without having to follow the SEC regulations. And people did that, and they made tons of money, and then they lost tons of money. Okay. Or the venture capitalists made the money and the retail investors lost the money. Okay. So almost all the crypto, there's over 20,000 other cryptos, are companies that are using a token to raise money, and then using the money, and then the token becomes like the shares. Instead of getting shares in a company, you get the tokens. That then becomes how you can trade it, and the money they get, they're looking at doing technology to solve a problem in the world. Okay. But they're not decentralized. Okay. That's why Bitcoin has been, actually, the US FTC has said it's a commodity. Okay. It's the only cryptocurrency that the government has said is a commodity. Okay. Because there's no head of it. It's kind of like oil. Like it just anybody can mine oil, anybody can drill for it, anybody can do that. Same with Bitcoin. Anybody can hold Bitcoin, anybody can mine it, anybody can do it. There's no president, there's no Bitcoin company, there's no marketing budget for it. It's just decentralized, just like oil is decentralized. Oil lives all around the world. Okay. Does that answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. What other any other questions out there? Then we're
I'll throw one more out
Yep.
there if you don't mind, and then I'll
Sure.
keep my mouth shut. So I think most prudent financial advisors say that, if somebody's trying to create a financial plan, that Bitcoin should be probably some part of it. Maybe not a huge percentage, but something. So what would be your recommendation on the best way to own it? I've heard that these, platforms like Robinhood and things like that, they're certainly not, there's disadvantages to buying and owning Bitcoin that way. So I guess what would you recommend? You talked about cold storage.
Yep.
It seems to me that's the easiest way to do it, which I think
No,
makes sense.
that's
And then,
that's the best way to do it, but the hardest way to do it.
right. And then how do you actually buy it? Do you have to buy
Yep.
that through some type of exchange?
Yeah. So the question is, how do you buy Bitcoin? There's several ways to, so before I answer that question, I want to go back to something I did an incomplete thought. I want to go back to that blockchain for a second. What makes the blockchain transformational is that there's going to be one blockchain for all monetary transactions in the world at some point in time. It might not be in my lifetime. It probably won't be in my lifetime. Okay. And for the first time, the blockchain revolutionizes accounting. It transforms accounting. For the longest time, we've had two-dimensional accounting, debits and credits. Yes, if you guys deal with QuickBooks, you know how that works. Okay, the blockchain is three-dimensional accounting. Okay, because once something is written on the blockchain, it's immutable. Okay, you and I all know that we can like have our QuickBooks, so we can go back to April and make a change in our QuickBooks and reclassify something, move something around, delete the entry, right? So there's no third dimensionality to QuickBooks and to debits and credits. Every 10 minutes, the transactions get put on the blockchain and they cannot be changed. So you've got the third dimension of accounting is time. Now, this might not mean anything to all of you, but you can actually start to get how this transforms everything, because everything is now auditable by the public. I can look at Coinbase and I can see how many Bitcoin they own, because we know what their which wallets are theirs. Okay. Everything is auditable on that blockchain because it's public and it's immutable. So that just really completely transforms a lot of different accounting, businesses, everything. Okay, and it's one of the aspects of Bitcoin. So answering your question, Robert, the first thing I'm going to say, a lot of people ask, do you want to say, you want to ask a question, Rachel? You have your hand?
Yeah, after Robert.
Okay. So everybody says, well, how much Bitcoin should I own? Blah, blah, blah. That's obviously a personal decision. I'm not going to answer it. The only answer I'm going to give you is the only wrong answer is 0. I really believe that. I mean, you start out with 1%, 0.5%, 0.25%. I have a lot of friends that are 100% of their net worths in Bitcoin. Okay. I have about 40% of my net worth in Bitcoin. Okay. So it can go anywhere from just, get off of 0. Because what I've also learned is that even if you buy $100 worth, you buy $1,000 worth, you'll start learning about Bitcoin because you'll actually own it and you'll be more in tune to it. You'll start reading articles and listening to podcasts, and it kind of gets you into what the power of how Bitcoin can really transform society. Okay. So that I just want to say that there are basically 3 ways to store Bitcoin, to buy it and store it. You can buy it, so the US government has basically last January blessed Bitcoin for the first time because they allowed the ETFs. Okay, so the ETFs are kind of like a mutual fund that own Bitcoin, and you can buy the ETF. So in the past, you had to go to Binance, you had to go to FTX, you had to go to Coinbase, Robinhood to buy your Bitcoin. Now, if you choose to, you could just go to your Schwab account, your Fidelity account, or whatever brokerage you use, and just go buy one of the ETFs, and you own exposure to Bitcoin. You don't actually own the real Bitcoin. Okay? Because the ETF owns the Bitcoin, and you have like a paper promise for them to give that to, that they hold that Bitcoin. So you can buy the ETF. That's the easiest way to do it. Okay, because you could do it today. Most of you have accounts set up at one of those companies, and you can just go in and buy the ETF, and later today you could own Bitcoin. Okay, that's number one. But you don't, and there's pros and cons to each one. It's the easiest way. It might be the safest way for you. Okay, because whenever you own Bitcoin, you have to understand what your attack vector is. How could you lose your Bitcoin? A lot of people will never store their Bitcoin, will never buy an ETF because the government has access to the ETFs. See, in 1939, the government confiscated all the gold. Do you guys know that? They passed rule number 6102. Now, they didn't quite confiscate it. They needed more gold for their treasury, and they made it illegal to hold gold, and they passed a law that forced you to sell your gold to the government at the fair price. So a lot of Bitcoiners go back to that they're worried that when Bitcoin starts to grow and grow and grow and maybe become a threat to the US dollar, the government's going to require you to sell your Bitcoin to them because they'll need it so I don't know. I don't know if that'll happen or not happen, but a lot of people are worried about that. So if that is the thing that you're worried about, you don't want to buy the ETF because you don't own real Bitcoin. Okay. You own like a paper, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a paper IOU on it. Now the Bitcoin, the ETFs go up and down with the price. So if you're just looking for price action, yes, you'll get that 100% by owning the ETFs. That's the easiest way. The next easiest way would be buy real Bitcoin, but store it on an exchange. I don't know if Robinhood does that. I just don't know. Coinbase does it. Kraken does it. Swan does it. There's lots of companies that you can actually buy. Unchained does it. You can buy Bitcoin and you actually have real Bitcoin, but they're holding it for you. Okay. Now the advantage to that is that it's real Bitcoin. And the advantage of that is you should be able to move it from the exchange right to your own cold storage in a matter of minutes if they don't slow it down or freeze it or confiscate it. Okay, so that would be another advantage. If you buy the ETF and later on you want to exchange that for Bitcoin, let's say you buy $100,000 or $10,000 of Bitcoin of ETF, and it goes to 100,000. And now you're kind of more sophisticated, you want real Bitcoin. Well, now you have to sell that ETF and pay the taxes on it. So you have to kind of think, you have to think through like what's the long-term plan here. So I recommend that people buy it on an exchange, whether it be Coinbase. I hate Coinbase. I don't recommend them because there's nothing wrong with them. The customer service is terrible. You buy it on an exchange, and if that's what you feel comfortable with, that's fine. Okay. The next way to do it is to buy it on an exchange and immediately move it to cold storage. But you have to understand what your attack vector is. So my attack vector is my wife and kids. Okay. To ensure that they have access to the Bitcoin if something happened to me. And when I hold it in cold storage, there's a risk that they won't be able to do that. Now I've set all these things up so they will be able to do that. I have companies supporting me in that. But you have to understand that if you take it off the exchange and you hold it in cold storage, you have to be responsible that if something happens to you, that your heirs can get access to it. And if something happens to you and your wife at the same time, for example, that your kids will get access to it. So it takes more work, more planning. It's more difficult. Okay. But it's the safest way to go. Because remember, sovereign money equals sovereign security. Okay. You also want to protect it in a way that if somebody comes to your house and puts a gun to your head, nobody can do that to me. I mean, they can do that to me. They won't get my Bitcoin because I can't physically transfer my Bitcoin from my house. I have to go to multiple geographic locations to actually do that. So we can go more into how that all works. You can also stay on after 9 and we can talk about that. So everybody's different. Everybody has different intentions, different things. So and I would always tell people that you start buy the Bitcoin. We can always move it to the storage later. Most of the people that I've given advice to buy the Bitcoin on exchange. They hold it on the exchange. And then as they get more sophisticated, they move it off the exchange into the cold storage. But that could be a year later, 6 months later, 3 years later. The point is, don't let all this stop you. The point is get off of zero, whatever that number is. Did that answer your question, Robert? Okay, great. Yeah, Rachel?
So this is from Dave, who does not have a way to communicate this to you right now.
Okay.
His question is, with the BRICS movement away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency and their creation of a new currency partially backed by gold, what effect, if any, do you think this will have on the future of Bitcoin?
I think that the BRICS are going to move to Bitcoin. They're already doing it. It's not official. I mean, after Russia got cut off from the financial system, they were one of the bigger miners of Bitcoin. They're probably mining. I mean, nobody knows, but I would guess they're mining 5 to 10% of the Bitcoin right now because it's a way of them to get that money. So I believe the next step for Bitcoin is to replace gold. Bitcoin is a better gold than gold. Okay. It's 100% capped. It's 100% auditable. See, Merrill Lynch bought $300 million of gold last year, only to find out that it was gold plated lead, I think. Like when they cut open the bars, they actually got ripped off. 300 million. The only way to audit gold, the only way to 100% audit it is to melt it down. You can have like gold bars that are half gold, gold on the outside, that there's some other metal on the inside, and they can pass a lot of tests that way. So gold, if you look at what is money, there's like 14 attributes of money. One of the attributes is divisibility. Is it easy to make gold divisible? No. You can't try scraping off a little bit of gold and paying for a coffee or a car. Like you can't do it, right? So Bitcoin, you could do that. Gold is not transportable easily. You need armed guards, you need security. I mean, try moving $100 million worth of gold. It'll cost you $1 million in security just to move it. So when you start looking at all the things that gold brings to the table, Bitcoin's actually better. So if you believe that, I think that's obvious. I think that is, nobody disagrees with that. Then the question is, will the sovereign countries make a move from gold to Bitcoin? I believe they will, but I think it's going to be really slow. I mean, the countries are the last ones. They're not on the cutting edge of this kind of stuff. I believe in the next 10 years, that Bitcoin will replace gold, will reach the market cap of gold. The market cap of gold is about 15 trillion, somewhere between 12 and 16 trillion. So when Bitcoin gets to about 650,000 or about 9x where it is today, it will flip gold. And it'll be a bigger market cap than gold. And I think it'll be the way that gold will go down in the future, and Bitcoin will overtake it. Though it'll take decades for that to happen.
So what if you want to buy something using Bitcoin and there's no electricity if the power goes out?
Well, try buying something with, anything without electricity, right? Like I mean, you can't get gas, right? I mean, even if you pay with cash, you can't get gas.
Right.
So if you are gonna, so as long as there's one computer up and running, in fact, they've like launched one into space that has the Bitcoin stuff on the node. As long as one computer is up and running in the world, the Bitcoin will still transact. Now, whether you can transact where you are is another issue. Okay. However, you don't necessarily need electricity. You could have battery powered, like you could transact on your phone, okay, with a battery and an internet connection. You will need an internet connection. You'll need a small power source. But if we lose electricity for months at a time, everything, I mean, then the new currency is ammo and guns and seeds, right? Like it's just a whole different, if you think through it. Okay, it's 10:01. I want to kind of complete the conversation. I want to Rachel did do that. We'll do it again. We'll post my contact information. If you want to call, email, whatever, feel free to do that. I'll stay on and answer any questions. Um, and Thank you guys all for coming. And a week from today, we have the Bitcoin mining. So if you want to understand Bitcoin mining, and I'll just describe this. Bitcoin mining is everything you don't know about Bitcoin combined with everything you don't know about energy. It's the most unbelievably like complicated. It takes a while to wrap your head around how Bitcoin mining works, but we'll have that conversation a week from today at the same time at 9 a.m. Okay, and so yeah, so Pam, just uh if you can you Rachel, can you just post your links to register for the Bitcoin, the link page?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome. You guys, thanks everybody for coming. It's awesome to see some of you guys. Some of you guys I haven't talked to in a while. I know you talked to Dennis a lot on the lead paint side. So thanks for coming. I'll stay around if you guys want to ask some more questions, but we'll complete the official seminar.
And
Thank
I
you, Neil.
just
Appreciate it.
Yep. Take care, Jose.
I just put the link in for the upcoming class and that one is the Bitcoin mining, and then there's also hard money lending and lead paint and mold, other things that we talk about.
Yeah, Matt, do you still have, is that your hand raised?
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you do want to go into buying Bitcoin,
Mhm.
you said the ETF way, or just going in and using an exchange. You said that you have some preferences of which ones to use. So I'd like to get your take on which ones you recommend, and then also what's the difference between the exchange and your Bitcoin wallet?
Okay, good. So Swan Bitcoin is I like Swan Bitcoin. Swan, and I just put it in the chat, okay?
Mhm.
Swan Bitcoin, I do own a small piece of that company. I mean, it's a very big company. I put some money in a long time ago, okay? Just so I'm fully just transparent, okay? But
Mhm.
I put money in because I was a client and I liked them and they were raising some money, so I put some in, okay?
Okay.
So Swan is one of the best places to buy Bitcoin. That's where Rachel buys her Bitcoin. It's very well set up to dollar cost average. So you can like say at 11 a.m. on Mondays, I want to put, $500 in. And every Monday at 11 a.m., they'll pull it out of your account and buy your Bitcoin. So it's really easy and simple. They are very into Bitcoin. There's not even a sell button. You can sell your Bitcoin on the exchange, but like they are supporting people who just want to buy and hold Bitcoin. Okay. If you want to exchange, you want to like sell and trade it, I would recommend Kraken. I think it's kraken.com.
Mhm.
I've done some stuff there. I like them. The customer service is really good. So those are the two. That's my two. Coinbase is fine. There's just the customer service sucks, but they're fine.
No.
From your other question was, well, how to hold it? I
Well,
can't.
what's the difference between, they said, like, I went on a Bitcoin, like, just general exchange, and they said, before you choose an exchange, choose like a wallet. And so I'm just wondering, like, what's the difference between the exchange and the wallet?
So I don't know why they said that. I'm not sure what the context was. You don't really have a wallet. They might call it a wallet on the exchange, just like Fidelity would call it your account number.
Okay.
Okay, so that's interchangeable. But a true wallet would be one that you own the key, not your keys, not your coin.
Right.
So that you have the keys for that's off the exchange. So if the exchange goes under, FTX was an exchange
Hmm.
and they went under and people lost their Bitcoin, right? Now, that shouldn't happen in today's, like, I think none of us worry about if Fidelity or Schwab goes under, we're going to lose our stocks that we have there because they separate that. Like the company can go bankrupt and we still have our stuff that we own. But in this early days of crypto, those were problems.
Hmm.
Okay. Those are less of problems now, but it's still a non-zero chance. So the faster you can get your stuff off the exchange, the better. However, and this is really important, you have to understand your attack vector. So Matt, so let me give you an example, Matt. So it's a little bit of a long story, but you'll so totally get it. I have a friend who I got to buy some Bitcoin. He had several Bitcoin, like 3 Bitcoins. It's a lot of money, 200 some $1,000s, right? And he has it on the exchange. And I said, it's time for you, it's time for you to take it off the exchange. And he bought the $200 worth of equipment he needed to do that. We were flying together to a football game. And I said, bring all your stuff. We're going to set you up. So he texts me. I text him. I said, why don't you bring over your laptop to my room and we'll get you set up. He goes, let's go down to the bar and have a drink. And let's do it down there. I go, we can't do that. I'll just say his name was Dave. I go, Dave, we can't do that. He goes, why not? And I said, because you like there's camera, like there's people, like
Yeah.
if somebody sees those 24 words, if somebody sees like what will be considered your keys, your passwords, they can take all your coin.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it. If somebody's looking through and they see it and they get those 24 words, in 10 minutes your money will be gone. He's like, no, don't worry about it. The chances of that happening are so slim. Let's still do it. I looked at him. I said, Dave, you're not ready for self-custody yet.
Yeah.
You're your own worst enemy. You're your own attack vector because you're not taking this seriously. Okay, so you got to understand. Everybody has different attack vectors. If somebody's 80 years old who could die, almost any day, it's different than somebody who might be 25. Now, obviously, I know a 25-year-old can die, but if I was 85 years old, I would put all my Bitcoin on an exchange just to make it easier if I die for my heirs to get my Bitcoin.
Yeah. So can you change your key? So like you said that, your risk level is that on the exchange, it's more risky because they have your keys. And so if you take off of that and you store it somewhere else and you're the only one that has the keys, isn't there a copy of the keys in the exchange as well?
No, once you move into cold storage, there's no copy. Now, what most people do so the way that you keep it in cold storage, you have this little thing that looks like a USB drive. It's not a USB drive, but it looks like one. And it's called a seed signing device. And you put your 24 words, that is your key, 24 words in exact order, words that the software gives you, okay? And you put them into that device, and it like I'm not a technical guy. It burns it into like the chip. Okay.
Yeah.
Then when you want to move Bitcoin, you connect that device and it signs it because it has the keys.
Right.
Now, you might say, well, if I had the device at home, what happens if my house burns down? I step on it, it goes bad. You have a backup. Where's the backup? Well, what most people recommend is that you have these steel plates they sell for about $100, and you like take like this. I can actually show you what it looks like. Or maybe I can't, not easily. I thought I had it right here. Oh, here it is. You take this like little thing like this, and you just etch it. You pick the letter. So you pick the word, you etch the words into the steel plate. You hide it somewhere in your house. You bury it in your backyard, and if the house burns down, that steel plate will still be, and you can still have access to your keys. Okay, so you always have to have a backup to your keys. But then, some people will say, well, why not do it in a safety deposit box? You could do that. But if you keep your keys in a safety deposit box, you're now giving access to whoever has access to that safety deposit box. If the government comes and takes it or confiscates it, now they have your Bitcoin. Right. If an employee sees what you're doing, they have your Bitcoin. A lot of people don't trust the banks. They don't trust the government to do that. Some people will take half the words in one bank, safety deposit box, and the other half in another safety deposit box. There's infinite ways to do this. And a lot of it depends on what you view your risks are. My risks are my wife and kids. So I take the appropriate actions, and I spend a lot of money to ensure they have access to my Bitcoin if something happens to me. Because my wife she knows we own Bitcoin, but she has no idea how this all works.
Right.
If you had a wife that was in with Bitcoin as much as I was, then I wouldn't worry about that as much. She'd understand how to get it. So
if you lose that key, or you said in the early days, people had Bitcoins on laptops and then got stolen or got thrown away. You said it's capped, so those are all lost forever?
Yeah. I mean, unless they figure out a way to get them. There's a guy that has $650 million of Bitcoin on his laptop, and that laptop is in a landfill in in England somewhere, and he's trying to get the city to allow him to go and find his laptop. This is from, it's from years ago, and that's what, it's probably like a few $1,000s, and now it's all this money. And he's actually offered to split the difference with if they give him permission. He's going to pay like tens of millions of dollars to go through his landfill and find his computer and get it off of it, and they haven't given him permission yet. He offered to give the city 50% of the Bitcoin that he finds if they do that. So yeah, we think that about 20% of all the Bitcoin has been lost permanently already. Now, I don't think that'll happen as much going forward because it's so much more valuable now.
Yeah.
One of the funny things, this is one of my favorite stories. I was on Reddit, and there was a post titled "How I Smoked $180 million of Bitcoin." And what the guy did was he was mining Bitcoin back in 10, 11, 12. And the $3 to $10 a day he was making in Bitcoin was his weed money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you add that up in today's money, it was 180 million.
Wow.
So it's just very different back then. And today, I know it's hard for you guys to get, but there's no doubt that Bitcoin is going to 1 million. Like there's zero doubt in my mind. I don't know the time frame. It could be 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, but it's the same thing where we're going to 20x from the 60K easily in that time frame. Just has to. If you understand that Bitcoin is if price is a function of supply and demand, and the supply is fixed, then price is a function of demand. So as long as people continue to understand and get Bitcoin and continue to adopt it, the price has to go up.
So, question, and Matt, if you're not done, I just want to insert this question. I was going to type it. You paused.
Good.
Is what happens with the I know that the incoming president is Bitcoin friendly.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, we don't know. He says he's Bitcoin friendly. Trump says a lot of things, right? He said all the right things, and that's why Bitcoin was up, almost 10% yesterday alone. It's basically the same last night as he went up about 10% as it looked like he was going to win. What it could mean from the perfect scenario where he wants a Bitcoin standard as a reserve, where the Fed is buying Bitcoin to put on their balance sheet as a hard asset, just like we used to buy gold and have a gold reserve. Okay. That would be like Bitcoin would probably go to 10 million if he did that. Okay. I don't think he'll do that. I think that's way more complicated, and the country's not ready for that yet. And it's very complicated to do that inside the way the rules of the government are designed. But from what the Bitcoin people want and the crypto people in general is we want to not be cast out as pariahs, which we are now. It's hard to own a Bitcoin business and have a bank account because the Fed doesn't want banks to supporting the Bitcoin or crypto because of what happened with FTX. So most Bitcoiners have been debanked at some point. If you own a business, you have to find a bank that's willing to accept you. So all that kind of stuff will disappear. There is a Bill of Rights that he's supported that would give you the right to self-custody. So one of the big attack vectors for Bitcoin from a government perspective is I think we're past the point where the US government will make Bitcoin illegal. Like that was a concern in like 17, 18, even 20. They've approved the ETF. Now, and there's $20 billion in the ETF in only 6 months, and that's going to continue to grow. So it's hard for them to approve something and then make it illegal. So I think we're to the point where Bitcoin will not be illegal, which is good. That eliminates that factor. But what they are going to attack is the fringes of that, where they're going to say you can't self-custody it. Okay, where you have to keep your Bitcoin on an exchange. It's illegal to keep it in cold storage. That is a fight that is probably coming. The government wants it on their rails. They love it being the ETF because then it gets taxed correctly. They get their money. And the people that own it in cold storage, some of them probably are not paying their taxes when they sell it. And that's an issue for the government. So what they're going to want to do is say, own all the Bitcoin you want, just keep it on our rails. Rails being the banks, the brokerages, exchanges. So there is a digital asset like rights bill that's been floating around that Trump has said he supports, and one of the things in there is the right to self-custody. And that's like really critical to somebody like me personally. That's one of my pet peeves. So the battles for Bitcoin in the future will be on those types of things. How much do we have to report? How much do we have to use their guardrails? Can we have self-custody, et cetera?
But they won't know how much you've got in self-custody leading into it. Like the people who have like me having it on Swan.
Well, they know because
Well, they know that, but they
right.
won't know like what you've got in self-custody in
Right.
cold
So
storage.
there's kind of like three main ways to get Bitcoin, right?
Mhm.
Uh, call it four ways. One is you buy it KYC, which it means know your customer. You're buying
Mhm.
on exchange, which means they know how much you have. Okay, and it's all tailored, nailed back to your social security number. The
Right.
second way to buy Bitcoin, it would be cash. I just go to Matt and I buy, or go to you, Rachel, and I give you $75,000. I buy a Bitcoin. I'll give you 5,000. I buy 1/15 of a Bitcoin, whatever that is, right?
Mhm.
That would be non-KYC Bitcoin. Now the government doesn't know I own that. Okay.
Right.
So that's important. That's one way to do it. Most people don't do that. Only the really hardened, sophisticated Bitcoin maxis do that. Okay. The third way is somebody gives it to you like in exchange for something, like they buy a car and you get the Bitcoin, you get $10,000 of Bitcoin in lieu of the used car. So yeah, there might be a record of that because there's a record of selling the car with a DMV, but they don't know that you got Bitcoin for it. Okay. That would also be non-KYC. Where most people get their non-KYC Bitcoin is through Bitcoin mining. Okay. So you can mine Bitcoin, and you get the Bitcoin and the government doesn't know you have it. Now we mine Bitcoin. We get a lot of Bitcoin. We pay our taxes. Government, we pay taxes on the money we make. So the government kind of knows we're Bitcoin mining and they know that we've gotten Bitcoin, but they don't, without an audit from them, they don't actually know where that Bitcoin is. It's not on the rails inside the government rails. So those are kind of like your four ways to get Bitcoin both on and off the rails.
So
That would be an example, Rachel, of one of the things that the government might try to do is make us submit reports on our Bitcoin mining of where all the addresses were. So they might force us to KYC, right?
right.
To file a report with them of where what addresses I sent my Bitcoin to, because then they can follow that.
Right. But what you've got right now in cold storage, they wouldn't know about, and it's just there. So that is like you're protected from that in a way that I'm not
Correct.
of government, I don't know,
Correct.
intervention
Yep.
or like so right.
Yep.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know was like if
Yeah,
someone saw that coming, then we'd want to get it off.
Right. So there's two. I want to distinguish two things here, Rachel. There's two things here. One is the government knows what Bitcoin you have, and they can take it instantly from you.
Mhm.
All you do is freeze your account at the exchange.
Right.
So so that's one thing. Then the second thing is, do they know what you have? See, they might know what I have. Some half of my stuff or more than half of it is KYC. I bought on it. They know I have it, but they can't get it. They could throw me in jail,
Right.
okay, but they can't actually take my Bitcoin without me giving them the keys.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so looks like Pam asked a question. You are mining one Bitcoin a month, current value, and electricity cost generated is how does that work? So good question, a real good question, Pam. So first off, you should definitely sign up for the next Bitcoin mining class, which is a week from today at 9 a.m.
Yeah, she already did.
She already did. Okay, good.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
when I said 140,000, I said that would be the cost of the electricity if we were mining in Maryland. We're mining in South Dakota. Our cost is about 35,000 a month. And then we have about $5,000 in other expenses. So our expenses every month are 40,000. Okay. So last month we made 24,000. Okay. This month we'll make more because the price is up. Okay. However, you might say, wow, 24,000, that's awesome. well, first of all, we had to put $1 million into it. Okay. And second, we're gonna have to put another 1.5 million in about 3 years because the computers will have to get replaced. So I need to get my 1 million back, you know, and a return because I have to put another 1.5 million in because at some point in about 3 years, I'll become unprofitable because the computers will be inefficient compared to all the other computers out there. So I'll be at a disadvantage. So don't, so there's that. And just to give you an example, Bitcoin mining is incredibly tough right now. To give you an example, in March and April, we made about $160,000 for the month profit. And then in May, between May and September, we averaged $10,000 profit. Okay. So the thing about Bitcoin mining is it can be incredibly profitable and it can be incredibly not profitable. I know you're saying, Pam, not bad average, but remember, I put $1 million in. I need to get that money back in 4 years because I have to put that money and return on that money and put that back out because in 4 years, those miners are worthless and have to be replaced again. So just remember that it's not as simple as like, oh my God, 160,000, that's great. I still haven't, we've been doing almost exactly a year and, we're not even close to getting our money back. So I think when Bitcoin goes, the thing about Bitcoin mining, which is really awesome, but it goes both ways, is that our costs are fixed no matter what. I'm spending $40,000 a month no matter what. If Bitcoin goes to 150 tomorrow or this year, then I'm making $110,000 a month. 150 minus the 40, I make 110. So you can see that if Bitcoin doubles, my profitability 6x's or something. Because this all flows to the bottom line, 100% of it. There's no additional increase in expense. But it also goes the opposite way. If Bitcoin were to go to like 40 grand, I'd lose money. Okay. Yeah, so Pam, we do think we will, but it depends on the price. Bitcoin needs, it needs to go. The reason we made so much money in March and April was because of the halving. So we were getting 6 Bitcoin every, per block, and now we're only getting 3 1/8. I know this probably doesn't make any sense. That's why you have to sign for the next course. So we'll walk through all this. But every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that gets distributed every 10 minutes gets cut in half. And that's why it became so if the amount of Bitcoin that we get, we were getting 2 Bitcoin a month. Now we're only getting 1. Okay. So the price has to double to make up for that. So we're waiting for now the next year. If the price doubles next year and goes to 140, 150 and stays there for a year, then we'll be sitting pretty. And if it doesn't do that, we could be hurting. I don't know. It's very difficult to predict the Bitcoin price is very difficult, but along with the Bitcoin price is the hash rate. So if you think of the hash rate as like how many computers are on the network, if there's 8 million computers on the network, but next year there's 12 million, it's the same amount of Bitcoin that gets divvied up. So we get less Bitcoin because there's more computers. So it's a very complicated circular equation that will have your head explode. What other questions do you guys have?
Any questions about the halving? Because in 4 years, you're going to end up with getting half a Bitcoin a month instead of
Yep.
a whole,
Exactly.
and you will have had to replace all of your computing systems.
Yep. The neat thing so the halving, you might say, well, why is that way? That's how you get the 21 million. Okay. It started with 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes will get released. Then it went to 25 after 4 years, then 12.5, then 6.25. Now we're at 3 1/8. It'll keep having every 4 years until roughly 2140, not 2040, but 2140. And that'll be the last halving because you can't split it any further in half. And when that happens, the final, 21 millionth Bitcoin will be done. Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks for coming. And well, hopefully we'll see you next week for Bitcoin mining.
Yep. And in case you didn't see Dave's message on there, if you want to see the recording of this, this is for not for you, Neil, but for everybody else. It's going to be on our YouTube channel. So just go to at Lodestar Inspections is our YouTube channel, and I will post that. That'll be tonight, so you can see the recording.
Great. Okay, guys, thank you very much.